You just heard Iran's top diplomat charge. The president's national security advisor is working with key leaders in the Middle East to bring about regime change in Iran. And joining us now to respond, John Bolton. Ambassador, as you just heard, Foreign Minister Zarif says you're part of the B team, a small group of leaders, you in the U.S., others in the Middle East, Bibi Netanyahu, bin Salman, bin Zayed, who are working to try to steer President Trump into a conflict with Iran. Your response?
Well, he also said in another interview he wished he were working with the A-team. You know, in the past few days, the North Koreans have also called me dim-sighted. The Cubans have said I'm a pathological liar. I'd say I've had a pretty good week.
And your response to his allegation, though, that you and some Middle East leaders are trying to foment a conflict between the U.S. and Iran?
You know, it's completely ridiculous. I think what that interview showed was a carefully prepared propaganda script by the Iranians. This is their effort to try and sow disinformation in the American body politic. The fact is the president's policy on Iran has been clear well before I arrived in the administration. It is to put maximum pressure on the regime to get it to change its behavior. And I think it's working, and I think that's what they're worried about.
Well, Zarif is right about one thing. In 2017, as he said, you did give a speech to MEK, an opposition group, which at one point, not now, but at one point was listed as a terrorist group, in which you talked about regime change in Iran and celebrating in Tehran with MEK in 2019, this year, which is the, 40th year anniversary of the overthrow of the Islamic Revolution, which raises the question. Do you really, I know when Pompeo was asked this, Secretary of State Pompeo, he always says, well, no, we really want behavior change. Do you think this regime is capable of behavior change?
Well, I think we'll have to see. Let me just say on the MEK, you know who took the MEK off the U.S. list of foreign terrorist organizations? Hillary Clinton, that well-known right-wing Republican. Look, the fact is that the Iranian regime continues to oppress its own people. It continues to be the world's largest financier of international terrorism. It continues to pursue ballistic missiles, the only real purpose of which is to deliver nuclear weapons when they get that capability. There's no doubt this regime is a threat in the region and globally, and that's why we think the pressure campaign has had a significant impact on their ability to carry these tasks out. If they want to get together and speak with the president, he said almost exactly a year ago when French President Emmanuel Macron came to Washington and he told Macron we were going to get out of the Iran nuclear deal, that he wanted to see a negotiation over all of these things, the nuclear program, the ballistic missile program, the support for terrorism, and Iran's other malign behavior. When they're ready to talk, the president would be ready to talk.
I understand all of that, but honestly, don't you want to see regime change? Isn't that the only way to get an Iran that isn't a threat to the neighbor? You've just laid out a real bill of particulars why it's such a bad actor in the region.
Yeah. Well, look, the people of Iran, I think, deserve a better government. There's absolutely no doubt about it. The trouble is it's not just a theological dictatorship. It's a military dictatorship, too. That's a very difficult circumstance. We'll see what happens as the economic pressure continues to grow.
Well, let's talk about the economic pressure, because Zarif says that despite the administration announcement this week that you are ending the waiver on 5 nations that were still buying oil from Iran, and that as of, I guess it's May 2nd, that the waiver is over, the ban goes into effect. He says that China and Turkey are saying that they're going to continue to buy oil from Iran.
Well, we'll see what happens. I think it's been clear for a year now, from the time President Trump announced he was getting out of the Iran deal, that we were going to return to sanctions and impose pressure on the regime there. And it's had a very significant effect. And by Iran's own estimates, the end of these waivers will have an even more significant effect. I'm touched that Zarif is worried that our allies are sometimes impatient with us on this point. But as I say, we've made clear our objective is the elimination of Iran's nuclear program, making sure its ballistic missile program is under control. Europe is the region most threatened right now by Iran's ballistic missile capabilities. So we have worked for the past year that I've been in the administration very closely with all of our European allies, and I think that glimmer of disagreement that Zarif said is mostly in his own eye.
Well, let me just ask you about that, because at least publicly, both Turkey and China have said they're not going to be pushed around. They're not going to be forced by the U.S. to stop buying oil. Have you gotten some kind of private assurance?
Look, there have been statements by Chinese companies that have been importing Iranian oil that they're going to stop. I met, as did Mike Pompeo, with the Turkish foreign minister some weeks back, who was already talking about the steps they were going to take to avoid buying Iranian oil. We'll see how it plays out. We've made our position clear.
Okay, let's turn to North Korea. President Trump said Friday that talks to get North Korea to fully denuclearize are still on track. Here he is.
I think there's a lot of excitement toward getting a deal done with North Korea.
But North Korean leader Kim Jong-un held a summit with Russian President Putin this week. Afterwards, Putin said that Kim wants security guarantees for his regime, not just from the U.S., but a bunch of other nations, and that in terms of denuclearization, that Kim wants a step-by-step approach, some denuclearization in return for some relief on sanctions. Are either of those acceptable to the U.S.?
Well, the idea of taking one step on each side was what Kim proposed in Hanoi. President Trump responded with what he called the big deal to try and persuade Kim Jong-un to walk through the door he had opened in Singapore last year to a much brighter economic future for North Korea. That door is still open. The president's still ready to have a third summit when the time is right.
The president ended up breaking off the summit because Kim wouldn't agree to much greater denuclearization. Is a step-by-step approach any more attractive to the president now?
I think if you look at the past policies, the answer to that's no. The past policies that have tried a step-by-step approach have all failed. Kim or his father have gotten economic relief and then somehow have never gotten around to that commitment to denuclearize they've now made 5 times expressly in the past 25 years.
All right. Putin also suggested a return to multilateral six-party talks, which is what the U.S. has been engaged in with North Korea, South Korea, China, other countries in the region in the past. Would the president go along with that, or does he still think one-on-one diplomacy with Kim is the best approach?
Well, I think he still looks for the possibility of a third summit with Kim. He feels pretty strongly about it. He said repeatedly he thinks he has a good relationship with Kim Jong-un, and the six-party approach failed in the past. That doesn't mean we don't consult, as the president just did on Friday, very closely with Prime Minister Abe of Japan. We consult with the Russians, the Chinese, obviously the South Koreans. President Moon Jae-in was just here a few weeks ago. So it's not like they're excluded, but I think it's not just what our preference is. I think Kim Jong-un, at least up until now, has wanted the one-on-one contact with the United States, which is what he has gotten.
Do you think Vladimir Putin is being helpful in this process, or do you think he's looking out for Russia and trying to get them back into the conversation?
I think Vladimir Putin always looks out for Russia, which is exactly what you would expect a Russian leader to do, exactly what you'd expect an American leader to do.
Is it being unhelpful, though?
Well, I think both Russia and China could tighten up their enforcement of the sanctions. I think they've been pretty good about it in recent months, but I think they could always tighten up. That would help keep the pressure on North Korea, which, after all, is what brought them to negotiate with President Trump to begin with. But I think President Putin would love to see the possibility of a rail link between Russia and South Korea, not North Korea. There's not much trade there, but I think he sees advantages, and I have no doubt he's pursuing them. I think that's very typical of Putin. He knows exactly what Russia's interests are, and he goes after them.
There was, I like to think I'm pretty sophisticated, but there was a shocking report, even to me this week, that before North Korea released Otto Warmbier, that they demanded that the U.S. pay $2 million for his medical care, even though he seemed to suffer greatly once he was taken prisoner there. Here's what the president said about that.
We did not pay money for our great Otto. There was no money paid. There was a fake news report that money was paid.
A few quick questions. Did North Korea demand money for the release of Otto Warmbier?
It appears that they did. This occurred before I came into the administration, but that's my understanding, yes.
Did the U.S. official who was there to get him out of the country, Joseph Yun, did he sign a document pledging the money in order to get him out?
That is what I'm told, yes.
And I guess the bottom line question is, did the U.S. pay any money to North Korea however it was disguised, after Warmbier was released?
Absolutely not. And I think that's the key point. The president's been very successful in getting 20-plus hostages released from imprisonment around the world and hasn't paid anything for any of them.
So basically, we signed the document fully intending not to honor it.
Well, I don't know the circumstances. I think when people leave government, sometimes their recollection of things that happened inside tend to be a little bit different from what actually happened. But it's very clear to me from my looking into it in the past few days, no money was paid. That is clear.
Ambassador Bolton, thank you. Thanks for coming in today. Always good to talk with you, sir.
Glad to be with you.